Let's take a closer look at possible future drivetrains for F1. Stefano Domenicali, head of the Formula One management, stated in Imola that he's already thinking about the next generation of Formula One drivetrains. And that's no surprise, since we can already guess today that the 2026 drivetrains are a bad compromise. But let's take a look at how we got there. In 1998, McLaren used an energy recovery system for the first time at the Australian Grand Prix, but the system was banned after the race. With the huge rule change 2009, an energy recovery system was allowed. Only 4 teams, McLaren, Ferrari, BMW and Renault, used it, but because of various problems, BMW and Renault kicked the system out of their cars before the end of the season. In 2010, all teams agreed not to use a kinetic energy recovery system, short CARES. From 2011 to 2013, most teams used CARES again and developed it further. And in 2014, the new drivetrain regulations kicked in. It was probably the lowest point in F1 history. The cars lost their high-revving V8 sound and instead had a not very appealing V6 turbo sound. The drivetrains were complicated, expensive, slow and very unreliable. At the same time, cars looked awful. Check out my other video to learn more about the special 2014 aero rules. But since it's F1, things develop further very quickly. And today we still have the same drivetrains, but we can say that F1 cars have around 1000 horsepower and they work reliably. But we could see that it's very hard for engine manufacturers to join. Additionally, the hybrid powertrain is increasing weight with its 2 electric motors and battery. The 120 kW MGU-K, so an electric motor connected to the crankshaft of the engine, can also recuperate brake energy and charge the battery. So the rear brakes of these cars can be smaller. The other electric motor is the MGU-H, and that is probably the trickiest part of this drivetrain. It's an electric motor which is connected to the turbocharger shaft. So it's spinning at over 100,000 RPM and in extreme heat. It can spool up the turbocharger or limit its shaft speed to limit boost. In this situation, when it's braking the turboshaft, it's producing power and either powering the MGU-K directly or charging the battery. So the whole energy management is pretty tricky, and in the end the fan doesn't get anything from it, except less sound. Mercedes actually presented a turbocharger with electric motor for the production sports cars, but other than that, the F1 drivetrain is not too relevant for car manufacturers, and it's expensive at the same time. So for 2026, regulators and teams sat together and decided for new drivetrain rules. They wanted to massively increase the electric part of the power split. Currently, the MGU-K provides 120 kW, plus a bit from the MGU-H, so let's say 150 kW hybrid power. The combustion engine provides around 800 horsepower, so F1 cars have around 1000 horsepower overall. For 2026, they increased the electric power to 350 kW, which means that the combustion engine only has to provide around 550 horsepower. In order to keep costs down, they kept the same engine, but kicked the MGU-H out. So the challenge was now, how do you provide 350 kW electric power if the 120 kW from the MGU-K at the rear are currently already at the limit? If you generate more energy at the rear axle, the rear wheels would lock. The obvious solution would be front electric motors, since you can recuperate a lot more energy there due to weight transfer under braking. But teams decided against it because they were scared that newcomer Audi would have an advantage there, due to their LMP1 experience 10 years ago. So if you cannot generate the 200 additional kilowatt from recuperation in 2026, where should they come from? Exactly, F1 will burn fuel to generate the electric power to charge the batteries. At the same time, they want to reduce fuel tank size, which means that 2026 cars could be pretty slow during a race, because they constantly have to manage fuel consumption. So you can see the dilemma here. Plus, we know that the sound won't be much better because they kept the same engines. But in terms of emissions, they will be fine because they will run on 100% sustainable fuel. So that is their joker now. And now Domenicali thinks loud about the future and introducing new drivetrain regulations already in 2030, because also they realize that 2026 won't be great. So let's brainstorm a bit about possible future drivetrains. If we say we run on 100% sustainable fuel, we could scratch the hybrid powertrain completely and simply design a 1000 horsepower combustion engine, so back to 3-liter V10s for example. That would be great for many, and you could argue that in motorsport you still use pure combustion powertrains because it's part of the fascination. But you wouldn't necessarily get manufacturers on board, since that would be against their company strategy. Or you completely rethink the 50-50 power split of 2026 for 2030. As we know from Formula Student, front electric motors can generate lots of energy, which allows you to use a much smaller battery. So with front electric motors, you can actually create lighter race cars. The generated energy would be enough to charge the battery without the need for burning extra fuel. That would reduce fuel tank size. At the front, you could use one electric motor in the nose with drive shafts to the wheels, but this would create a fatter nose. Or you use wheel hub motors in each front wheel. Yes, people say that you shouldn't do that as it's increasing unsprung load, but experience shows that in reality it's less of a problem. Of course, there are topics like high voltage and water cooling in the wheel assemblies, but this is F1 and it's a nice design challenge. So if we can generate electric power at the front wheels, we can also drive the front axle, which would make this an all-wheel drive vehicle. Some say that's against the F1 spirit, but it could be the future F1 spirit. A nice side effect would be that a car with combustion engine failure could drive back to the pits with the front axle. The problem with electric powertrains is that heat is generated in both directions, so if you brake or drive the axle. So the cooling requirement is higher if you also drive the front axle. Two front electric motors would also allow for torque vectoring, which is another relevant topic for manufacturers. The nice thing about this concept is that with the electric side out of the way, we only need a combustion engine which produces 500 to 600 horsepower. And since it's running on e-fuels, we can do whatever we want here. So it could be a high revving V8 with around 2-liter capacity. You could even allow teams to use different cylinder numbers as long as they don't breach the power limit. That would create different sounds. And current F1 packages have enough space for that, since there is a huge gap between engine and gearbox. Currently that's the extended bell housing, which is filled with all sorts of components. At the rear, the drivetrain could have another small electric starter motor for the combustion engine, which can act as low voltage generator and reverse as well. So you would save some weight on the gearbox. So what do you think? Can you imagine an F1 future without electric drivetrain? Or would you like to see an electrified front axle? How do you think F1 should look like in 2030? Let me know in the comments below and see you at the next video.